Another episode of Spec Talk in the books. Let's jump into some dollar bid Batman rogues. Batman 407 is first appearance of James Gordon Jr. as Baby. Everyone looks at year one, part one, since, well, it's the key out of the run. And the 4-point series is such an iconic arc. So part 4 here is always super overshadowed. Although James Gordon Jr. is only infant in the issue, it's first appearance that's super cheap and often overlooked and thrown in those $5 or less bins. It won't be until Detective Comics 871 that James Gordon Jr. would return as an adult serial killer and become one of Batman's better, newer rogues the last 2 decades. Having James Gordon's son come back as a villain is a great and massive punch to the Bat family right in the gut, and it leaves plenty of opportunity to play on, and definitely something I could see them do to a greater extent in future live action projects. Batman 412 is first appearance of Mime. Batman fans might remember Mime as a random bank robber who popped up, time and time again. But she remains a very affordable dollar bin first appearance, and it's one that's kind of often overlooked. I don't expect this book to ever really skyrocket for any reason, but I do think it's a fun Batman rogue, and fans can find this one in the cheap at their LCSs or comic shows. But it's just a random Batman villain that really was never used to a greater extent and has no significance to it, but it's just one of those cool first rogues to keep an eye out for to put with your amassing collection. Batman 417 is first appearance of KG Beast, who honestly is a super overlooked villain, cybernetic Soviet assassin. That's really all you need to know. KG Beast is one of the few Batman foes who can really go toe-to-toe with the Dark Knight and hold their own. Stories also often reflect real world events, as you see, Soviet super soldiers take on Batman isn't out of the live action picture. In the comics, Beast shows up from time to time and drops by. It's often a really fun read. That one issue lasts, God, probably 2018, 2017 ish, I think, when he fights Batman in the snow is really, really neat. But Cage Beast is a really, really neat villain that isn't used a whole lot. But when he is, it always makes for a very entertaining read. Detective Comics 585, Spirits of the Ratcatcher. Batman has always had a ridiculous rogues gallery, and Ratcatcher is no standout. Otis Flanagan does exactly what you think he does, and he controls rats. This is a book that you might not find for $1. A lot of, resellers and store owners and stuff are pretty hip to this title by now. And it's, kind of popped up and down, been a strangely hot book from time to time. But you do have a better chance of finding a second appearance to this first cover appearance in those dollar bins. Detective 586. It's definitely a book I see out there all the time. I usually pick it up when I see it for, cheap and with a decent copy because it's always in those dollar bins. And it's a cool cover. Detective Comics 599 is a dollar bin staple. First appearance of Henry Ducard, a massive character for the Bat family in the Bat history. Ducard was a mentor for Bruce Wayne before he went and became Batman. He's also a hitman who's hired to kill King Snake, and after returning to Gotham, he would end up testifying against Batman, which would rope him back into Batman's history. Even when Bruce Wayne is training under Ducard, they saw some friction between the two. After the French Manhunter had killed a suspect, Batman had cut ties with him. Ducard's son would also go on to become Nobody, who was an assassin who fights off with Damian. And Nobody's daughter would take on the mantle of, Nobody, become Nobody number 2 after her father's death. And she would also become a big ally for Damian going forward. Detective Comics 608 is first appearance of Anarchy, major Batman rogue. It can still be found in the dollar bins. Anarchy is a super identifiable villain. Thanks to the games, Anarchy is a character that's been made a lot more iconic than he ever was for a new wave and generation of fans. Definitely someone who could land as a ground level Batman villain in a Gotham based project. But he's a character that's always been kind of used from here, from there, since his appearance in 608. And it's definitely a book that from time to time is surprisingly still in those dollar bins, or maybe those $5 bins. And it's just a great key to keep an eye out for. Detective Comics 783 is first appearance of Nissa Ratko. who's actually the other daughter of Ra's al Ghul. Everyone knows Talia al Ghul as Ra's al Ghul's daughter, and mother of Damien, of course. But not everyone kind of remembers, and everyone seems to just kind of forget about her sister. Um, and honestly, it's one that even diehard fans just kind of skim right over. She has a massive history with her family, had died in concentration camps back in World War II. Her estranged father's obviously Ra's al Ghul, and she used a Lazarus pit to basically survive all the way to modern day. And fueled by nothing but the Lazarus pit and vengeance, making her hunt down her father. And I'm a huge Ghoul fan. I think there's a lot of great keys revolving around Ghoul and, of course, around Neil Adams. But this is just another one that's just kind of overlooked. Like, and there's a lot of, first appearance that are a bit smaller than the other bigger Ghoul keys, like First Sensei and First Nisa, that you may be able to find in those cheap ins. And it's just a cool book to keep an eye out for. Detective Comics 1001, right after that milestone, they bring in the first appearance of Arkham Knight in comics. He actually originates in the video games, and a lot of fans have gotten into Batman and gotten into comics in general in the last few years, thanks to the games. And villains that are heavily associated with those games pretty much are their guys. Regardless of their amount of history in the comics, it's really comes down to who they know going into the comics. Kind of reminds me how a lot of Bruce Timm characters in the animated universe characters have become extremely sought after today. You look at Harley Quinn is kind of her own thing, but even like all the Batman Beyond stuff, individual Bruce Timm characters throughout that Batman Adventures run, and plenty of the stuff have gotten hot. So I definitely think you'll see a lot more of these video game characters, or these characters that were more important in the games, like Anarchy, or first period of the games, like Arkham Knight, to become a little bit hot in the coming years. Our ninth book here is a little bit iconic. Shadow of the Bat, #1, is first appearance of Victor Zsasz. Victor Zsasz is a major Batman rogue. It's another super overlooked one. He's known for every kill he cuts himself. And there's a really cool, I want to say it was Injustice, where he's the one that actually kills Alfred, and he puts a mark on him. That was a really cool moment in, I guess, more modern comics. But there's a lot of copies of this book out there, and there's cheap bins. It's always been all over the dollar bins, really, since it came out. The only thing that makes this one tough at a 9.8 is those damn poly bags, but it's one that you'll be able to find at every LCS, every comic show, and it's just a cool book to pick up, especially considering how important Victor Zsasz is to, Batman's history, and he's just a very standout Batman villain for this era. Batman and Robin #1 is first appearance of Professor Pig. Pig's name was used in Batman 666, but it's not the same character. He's very obviously not identifiable as the Pig that you know. The pig-faced surgeon first appears in Batman and Robin #1 here. Last year, there was talks of Reeves doing a project involving Pig, but the Professor has become a lot bigger in recent years, and, he has a big impact on characters like Damian Wayne. Making this for easy connection for the Brave and the Bold project that's coming probably 2024, 2025, and beyond. This issue has been starting to get hot recently, alongside 666 for some reason. But you can still find it out there relatively cheap, or, just something to keep in the back of your mind. There's also multiple printings and variants for this book, and some of them are pretty tough. So that's another thing that might get overlooked, but I hope to see Pig and the Dolotrons pop up in some projects in the coming years. And as a bonus one for you, Batman Confidential 26, first appearance of King Tut in comics, character made for the 66 show, absolute classic. The iconic 66 villain shows up sparingly in the classic show. He's not even a main villain or much of a recurring villain there, but we all know of him. King Tut was an original creation like Bookworm or Egghead, who wasn't in the comics for decades and decades and decades. And decades later, Tut would finally be introduced in the comics. And today, it's still a dollar book that's super overlooked. I think it's just kind of neat to keep an eye out for, considering he has a history separate from the comics. But that's just a few of the super underrated Batman rogues and first appearances that you can find in the cheap. But let me know if I should include anyone else in the future videos, or if you've picked up any of these recently. And if you enjoyed, follow me here on Facebook and Instagram for more daily content, and join the Facebook group Fandoms Unleashed for a behind-the-scenes look at comics and great conversations every single day. And all linked down in the description below. Until next time.